this is not going to touch too much GIS, but I would suggest that whenever you see statistics, try to replace it with GIS and see how it sounds. Because actually the idea is to try to figure out how to give support to researchers here on campus with the GIS. We have been, I think, successful in the statistical consulting area, and so maybe you can take some of these ideas and transfer them. Doesn't work. That one. Well, I'll go there. Okay, so I was starting with some historical background here. For statistical consulting, it started in 1948, and some of you might still remember Walt Federer was a faculty in biometry, at least in the unit of biometry, was one of the first faculty who was hired, and he started doing a lot of statistical consulting in those days with hand calculations. Little by little, we have starting to see the personal computers, the desktop computers, and we have added some other groups that would do consulting. CISR does a lot of statistical computing consulting, and the Office of Computing and Statistical Consulting was created also at the end of the 80s. Really, it came about because people started using mainframe computers and desktop computers, and as you will notice with my net ID with a 1, I have gone through all these areas, and the first questions were really, where is my data? How do I put it in there? How do I get it out there? And then let's run a t-test. Things have evolved very rapidly. And eventually, the Office of Statistical Consulting merged with the biometry consulting to form what's now the CSU, the Cornell Statistical Consulting Unit. And as I mentioned, there have been such rapid advances in statistical science due to the personal computers that we have. We have a lot of computer power on our desktop, and that's what's going on with GIS too. We can do splendid maps right now that we couldn't even think about 20 or 30 years ago. And everybody would like to produce them, but this is not an easy matter, and we need some additional help. So, of course, everybody should take classes. We need to take GIS classes. We need to take statistics classes. I will be the last person to say, quit the statistics classes, they're not useful. No, you should take statistics classes and GIS classes, but unfortunately there is a gap in between taking the class and then applying it to your own problems. And that is the gap that we have to try to solve with the statistical consulting or a GIS consulting, helping the researcher apply what they have learned in classes. So the objective of CSU is really to enhance research at Cornell by assisting researchers with their statistical analysis. But basically, we're really not just do consulting. We realized very early on that we had an instruction part in our mission as well. We cannot just tell people do this and then forget about it. We are trying to do capacity building, help them to be able to go out in the world and being able to solve their problems by themselves. So we do instructional and infrastructure services as well. We have a vision and we have a mission. Notice in our mission, we have statistical service, mostly consulting, but a big part is into the instruction and also instruction for the statistics students who want to become a statistical consultant. The 4 parts that we're doing is statistical consulting, instruction, collaboration. Collaboration and contract work are a step beyond the consulting, and we do that as well when time permits often, unfortunately. So, for consulting, what do? It's really a very broad range of services. We like to see people when they put a proposal together and when they design experiments, of course. We help them plan the appropriate statistical analysis, organize their data, implement the analysis, look at the output and understand the result. How do they present these results? How do they prepare for committee meetings? And how do they respond to reviewers and do the revisions of their manuscript? To give you an idea, this is all happening mostly with one-on-one consulting with clients, and in last academic year, we had about 2,500 individualized contacts. So that's quite a lot. That's where the instruction comes on. Very quickly, we realized that we were keeping on repeating the same thing when people had to get started with their analysis. then we decided to organize workshops so that people could have a refresher on their classes that they have taken, but also get introduced to new ideas or new statistical methods that they're not familiar with. So we do a bunch of CSU workshops, but we also go for certain courses, we do specialized lectures. Faculty will come and ask us, can you come and talk about logistic regression and so. We go into group and lab meetings, and then we also have an undergraduate and a graduate statistical consulting class where we give opportunity to undergraduate and graduate students to show them what it means to be a statistical consultant. Here again, to put some numbers, we had 33 workshops this past year and about the same number of specialized lectures. These are the type of workshop. You can see all that on our webpage. So beyond the consulting, we'll do collaboration and contract work. Collaboration is really, that's always a bit difficult issue. When does the consultant become a collaborator versus just a, I suggest you do that, and then you take it from there. When there is a need for collaboration, meaning more in-depth work with a client, usually we refer them to faculty in statistics and biological statistics and computational science. Then contract work. This is a whole other area. Many people on campus, not taking into account grad students because they need to do their analysis themselves, but would just like as well to give us the data, give us their research question and say, you go and give me the results. That's a big need on campus. Unfortunately, with the staffing we have, that's one thing that's on the back burner. We have difficulties doing that, but that's something that GIS people might get into problems with too at one point, because that's a huge additional need here. So the principles that we go by is we're consultant, we suggest what to do. We're not there to replace a committee or replace coursework. And we're trying to be very flexible as far as meeting times. We don't give appointments in 2 months, but within a week. And we do not deal with coursework. Don't come to see us for solutions for your homework. We're getting very good at finding the disguised people. So who are we? Well, basically, mostly the bulk of the work is done by staff statistician, 3.5 full-time people. But we're also supported by some BSCB faculty, 3 BSCB faculty that get relief from teaching to help us with consulting questions. So if there are some questions that the staff statistician has trouble answering, we can just refer them to faculty. This is a really important and useful way of dealing because we're taking the questions that are less of interest for the faculty and might actually allow faculty to find good collaborations to come up with new or develop new statistical methodology. In addition, PhD students in the field of statistics will help us out through the classwork, through the statistical consulting class. And often what happens is they end up having publications with some of the people they help. So this is a two-way street that helps everybody else. Financial model, we're a fee-for-service unit. So everybody that comes to our office has to be covered financially by some unit. We get our money from a patchwork of units. Different units put money into the unit. Somehow that has worked successfully for about 20 years. Let's knock on wood. It is a strange system, but it does work. It covers almost everybody on the Cornell campus right now, and which makes it very convenient for graduate students or researchers to come without having to worry, how am I going to pay for this? So this is practical. I was also asked to tackle one of the questions that you're supposed to debate this afternoon, and I think the only one where I could eventually say something is question number 3. What institutional programmatic support and infrastructure are required to enhance geospatial research, teaching, and extension program? Here again, I'll make a point that I think a consulting services would be needed in case the emphasis becomes even stronger on GIS. We have had questions on GIS coming through our office, and we try to handle as much as we can, but we are really not map makers. We cannot deal with these kind of questions. An important consideration here when you think about these issues is, do you want to get into consulting or contract work? It's very different. Making the map for somebody takes much more time than telling them how to make it, although it might feel sometimes that you as well would like to do it. But in the long term, you benefit from teaching people how to do it, and you need to be very precise on where you want to go. What I notice is that we talk about GIS, but GIS is really a lot of different things. We think of data collection and capturing. There is a lot of data management, and then you produce the maps as a communication tool, but very quickly people will come and ask you, well, how does yield relate with rainfall or with this, and we get into spatial statistics. All these are very specialized fields. A map maker is not necessarily a spatial statistician. A spatial statistician is not necessarily a map maker. So that's important to keep. Consulting needs to be very flexible as far as the field of application, type of researchers, type of consultant, faculty or staff, type of software and tools that you're going to use, and practical aspects and the financing as well. The challenges that I see is to try to convince decision maker that GIS courses are important, but is not everything. That if research has to go through using these tools, that somebody needs to help support this. Also convince decision makers that the initial investment or the investment they make will pay off, because proposal might be better off, publications will be better, and eventually it will turn around. One problem that we struggled with is finding appropriate consultant, because you need to have a flexible personality and you need to have good technical skills. In addition, there is a lot of competition for people that could do consulting outside of campus. Sorry to go over time.